There we go.
All right, so welcome everybody. I am Amy Komacher, an instructional development specialist for the Learning and Org Development Unit, and I am here with Summer. Summer, would you like to
Hi.
introduce
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah. My name's Summer McLean, and I am an instructional aid associate. I work under Amy, also in the Learning and Organizational Development Unit.
Great, thanks, Summer. So today's session is going to be the first in our series of digital accessibility essentials trainings. So today is digital accessibility, Word and PDF. And thank you all for engaging in our chat question. I see a lot of beginners and intermediates, and Jane Wright, I don't know what I don't know. That's great and a very honest answer. And we are here for you all that are in that boat. We're going to start with some real basics today, and we're going to try to demonstrate a few essentials that look a little different on PC and Mac. And we will not have time to demonstrate each item on both machines, but you'll get a better idea of what all of this looks like. We'll also be providing some resources to help you continue your efforts to learn this as you go. And I will be the first to admit that even though I've been doing this for a while, done some formal training, I am still learning every day. There is more to learn about digital accessibility every day. So yeah, Summer, go ahead and advance, whether that was accidental or not. It's perfect timing. It's great. So we'll get started with what is digital accessibility and a little bit of why. So first, digital accessibility refers overall to the usability of digital content for individuals with disabilities and the way they interact and perceive the content. And that includes documents, websites, videos, audio files, basically any digital content we might be delivering. And designing digital content, as far as digital accessibility goes, is designing digital content to be usable to the most people possible. We want people to be able to interact with our content independently. I think we all like to be able to find things on our own, not ask for help, and be able to successfully complete work without additional assistance. I am always thinking of my toddler, or well, she's a kindergartner now, but you know, when you're already 5 minutes late and she just wants to put on her own shoes. So, you know, everyone from all ages really wants that ability to be independent and use content and do things themselves. So I think that's a key principle of digital accessibility, is keeping that in mind, that we want to allow everyone to be independent with digital content. So along with that, why do we care about digital accessibility? So as I mentioned, the age range, you know, and a wide array of people. This lends well to our next point about digitally accessible content benefits all users. It generally improves usability for everyone. So a classic example we often use is when curb cutouts were originally designed. They were thinking of wheelchair users, but then they noticed people with carts or wagons or children in strollers using those curb cutouts, and people with bikes. So thinking of these items ahead of time generally improves the user experience for everyone in a lot of ways. And it also maximizes the ability of content to be consumed in multiple ways. I don't know about you all, but I actually really like closed captions. I'm kind of in the huge statistic, I think it was from BBC, of about like 80% of users that use closed captions are not actually deaf or hard of hearing. So I like closed captions when my kid is sleeping right next to me on the couch and I don't want to wake her up. So things like that. So digital accessibility improves the user experience, and it's the right thing to do, right? We want to do right by all people, create an experience that is friendly and inviting and engaging for everyone. So digital accessibility helps us get there. And additionally, it is required by law. There have been laws in place for a very long time, since like the 70s, about accessibility. So it is the law. And from a digital content standpoint, we also have the Ohio State Digital Accessibility Policy, which stipulates that all of our content that's out there for consumption, our digital content needs to be accessible. And I think we all want to do the right thing. So that's kind of why I prefer to focus on the benefits to users and user experience, and how we all want to take care of our customers, our clients, our participants, by making digitally accessible content. So with that, we can get into some of the demo, and we're going to start in Word. And I will start by sharing my screen. So we're going to start with some really practical tips to make an accessible Word document. And we also have some helpful tips to help you stay on brand as well, because that's also part of our work. So you'll see this document. I just have like a basic layout with a title and an introduction and this random list of stuff and a picture. But what we have here is a document with no actual structural formatting. So even though to a sighted person, this looks like something that is fairly well organized, if somebody were relying on a screen reader, the screen reader would just read out paragraph, digital accessibility demonstration document. So that's not really useful context for a person who can't see the structure of the document. So that's where some of our formatting tools in Word come in.
Amy, could you maybe zoom in on the document just a little bit?
Yes, thank you for
And
reminding me.
I also want to make a note that as we're going along here, we recommend that you don't try to follow along on your own devices, just so that reduces the chances of you getting lost and missing something, because this will be recorded and you'll have access to this video. So I think it's best, I think it'll be easier, kind of follow along on the screen and not try to do it yourself just yet.
Yes, so today just watch the demonstration, take it all in, and we'll distribute the recordings, we'll distribute additional resources. It's a little difficult to follow along with your own document and watch the share screen. So thank you for reminding me, Summer. I've zoomed in on this a little bit. I think that should help folks see. So we're going to start with just one of the most basic items on pretty much any document or flyer that you make is a heading or a title. So we usually use a heading 1 for a title, and in any document, you only want one heading 1. So consider heading 1 your title. And in this case, I've actually already saved my heading as a brand font and the brand Scarlet. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment, just to make constructing documents on brand that are also digitally accessible a little faster. So all you have to do to change the tags and the notation is highlight your text and click that heading. Alternatively, if you're starting with a fresh document, you just click your heading structure before you get started and type your title. So that's just how you make a title, and you tag it appropriately for a screen reader. And then the next piece is, you'll notice I have an introduction in this document. So I would like to tag that as heading 2, because this is sort of a section heading, but it's not a title. And to do that, I go up to the tools up here and save it as heading 2, but you'll notice that's not on brand. It's not the right font or color. So we can right click. This is PC. Summer will show how to do this in a moment on a Mac. So on a PC, you right click and then you go to modify. and it opens up a dialog box, which hopefully my share screen is showing.
Yep.
And you can leave the heading 2 name, but then this is where you get into the formatting options, and you'll see my brand font Buckeye Sands, and then I can also change it to the brand Scarlet. Although generally with my section headings, I sometimes play with color. Some documents I might use the dark gray or black, and we'll get in a little more about color choice later. For now, I'll just use the Scarlet. There's also this handy little radio button at the bottom that says new documents based on this template. So if this is the structure of a document you use frequently with this sort of branding, I recommend doing this, because now every time you open Word, it'll save those headers for you, and you don't have to fuss with all these settings each and every time you open a document.
Hey, Amy. The point in putting that title, so the screen reader, when it comes across that tag, right? Does it say title, digital accessibility?
It'll say heading 1. So
Heading
it gives
1,
you,
okay.
it'll say the heading level. And so then it'll help you get through whether this is like the umbrella overarching of the document. And then in this introduction would be tagged heading 2. And then the nice part about this is it also improves like keyboard accessibility and navigation through the document as you build in this structure. So it is also helpful for really long documents for every user, because it builds in kind of a nice, essentially like table of contents of sorts that you can get through in the navigation pane. So you continue to do this kind of down the line with your headings, and you can save those as brand fonts in the color of your choice. I'm going to stop sharing now. Summer, are you ready to take over and show how to do that on a Mac?
Yes, absolutely. All right. I'm gonna make sure I'm picking the correct document. There we go. All right. So I have this document, another document laid out, and as I was watching you do it, Amy, it does look very similar. The heading structure and how you use the headings and the different styles looks very similar. There is one difference for a Mac user. So like I've already have this digital accessibility demo in, I believe this is Buckeye Serif, and I've made that my heading 1. And so heading 2, my second heading, it's labeled as heading 2, but I do not have that in a brand color. So in order to change that on Mac, and I also have these other incorrect list formatting, correct list formatting are also examples of heading 2. And if I want to change my overall heading 2 for the entire structure of the document to something that's a little more on brand, like Amy did, I'm gonna right click on that heading and select modify. And I also have a dialog box pop up. And it looks very similar. There are a couple little differences, but I'm just going to change my font to Buckeye Sands regular for these. And I'm also going to change the color to black. And like Amy said, you can play around with this within brand. And for me, if I want to save this new formatting for my heading 2, in order to open up any document and have that be an option on Mac, I'm going to select the add to template. And when I click OK, it changes the rest of my heading 2s to that style. And then if I were to open a new document, I would have heading 2 also in Buckeye Sands. And so that's the one difference between PC and Mac, is the add to template versus there's a radio button on PC that says something similar, but not exactly the same. And now I want to move on to other types of formatting. So we have normal formatting. That's going to be your regular paragraph formatting. You'll use You'll use that for paragraphs, and once again, you can right click and modify that. And there are also headings 1, 2, 3. I believe there are more headings. If I go through here, I think there's up to 6 headings. But the main ones that you'll use are, your normal paragraph and then your headings, heading 1, 2, 3, and maybe title. So what I have shown here next, underneath my heading 2, is list formatting. Generally, it's difficult to do list formatting incorrectly on Word because a lot of things kind of auto format. But this first section here, incorrect list formatting, is an example of how you would incorrectly format lists. If you notice, when I highlight my list of items up here in the home tab, this little bulleted list or numbered list boxes are not highlighted. Whereas if I highlight these, my correct list formatting, it shows that I'm using the bulleted list. So whenever you're creating a list, a lot of times, if you start with number 1 and hit, well, it didn't do that there, and hit space, it'll automatically create a list for you. You just want to make sure whenever you have any kind of list that you are using the bullets or the numbering, because then a screen reader will read out list and then it'll read out the items of that list. And Amy, if I'm ever missing something, please just feel free to step in. So it's just very important for lists to make sure that you're using the bulleted or the numbered list buttons at the top of the screen. Otherwise, it'll read this like a paragraph and it just won't make as much sense to a screen reader.
And it is recommended for clarity to only use numbered lists when order matters. If order doesn't matter, it's recommended to use bullet points, which are tagged as an unordered list, which means order doesn't matter. So that is helpful for folks who are using a screen reader and kind of rely on those tags to tell them extra context.
Right. Perfect. Thank you, Amy. Moving on to color, I want to point out inappropriate versus appropriate color contrasts. So this is definitely a point where this is something that's going to help everyone. It's always difficult when you're watching a presentation and you cannot. The color contrasts are just so difficult that it actually strains your eyes to look at something, and it's hard to perceive that information. And I'll show you a little bit later how to review a whole document for accessibility, and Word will actually show you what contrasts are appropriate versus inappropriate. But we want to make sure that color contrasts are appropriate in text and images as well as text. I think, Amy, you pointed out to me yesterday that the grays in the OSU primary color palette are sometimes a little bit tricky to work with. So you want to make sure you're using the darker grays and the darker scarlets, and also be careful with the greens and yellows in the extended color palette. And so I'll show you right now. If I go to review, and we'll review this entire document at the end of the presentation. But if I just want to focus on these two lines of text. So I've labeled this first line of text as inappropriate. That's a little too light against the white background versus this other color underneath it. And when I go to review at the top of my screen and select check accessibility, the accessibility checker actually tells me under warning that there is a hard to read text contrast, and it tells me what line of text is hard to read. And then I would just change that color to a more appropriate color. And then you can check it again and it will update in real time. And we'll get back to checking the rest of the accessibility features a little later on. Also for color, one really important thing, if you are showing diagrams or other types of visuals, color should not be used as the only way to convey information. My first graph, my first pie chart on the left, I have different shades of green and then a little key at the bottom saying which is my sales for quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So someone who is colorblind or visually impaired in another way may have a difficult time matching up this legend to the colors on the chart, pie chart, and that may even all blend together to be just one big circle. So you can still use color, but make sure, number one, that you're using vastly different colors as possible. And at the same time, also labeling the data in another way. So within the pie chart on the right, I have really, really different colors next to each other with my legend, but I've also labeled my data within the sections of the pie chart. So once again, color should not be used as the only way to convey your information.
And two sets of colors that are typically pretty troublesome is red on green or red on blue. These color combinations can be particularly difficult for certain types of color blindness. So do be aware also of color selection and which colors you pair together. We can find some resources. I know there's some good ones out there I've used in the past to kind of help you sort through that as well. I'll get them and we'll be sure to post them.
Thank you. So that's my blurb on color. And next I want to talk a little bit about tables. So when you're creating a table in a Mac, I'm not sure if this is very different on PC. Let's see, if I select this first table that I created earlier today and I go to table design, you want to make sure that any table that you've created, first of all, has a header row. Luckily, at least on Mac, tables automatically have a header row, and that formats differently than a table without a header row. So if I were to take that off, that changes the styling, and it also changes the way the screen reader would read the information. And you can see this next table does not have a header row. So if I was going to create another table, go to insert table, and I'll just create a random table. Yeah, my header row is automatically checked off. Just make sure that is always checked off so you always have a header row. We also recommend with tables that they are only used, this is important, that they are not used for any type of visual formatting for documentation, that tables are only used for things that you would normally, for data, how you would normally present data. And try your best to only use simple tables because those are a little bit easier for screen readers to navigate. And if you do need to use a complex table, then we recommend providing a text transcript, a description of what's in your table somewhere beneath the table or in another document. In order to just okay, go ahead.
Okay, and in addition to tables that are complex, we also recommend either including a text-based caption or a downloadable transcript with graphs that might also be complex. What if you use a table for a calendar? Pam, I guess it would be depending on how big that calendar is, right? Like if you're building out a table for a calendar for an entire month worth of events and it's 30+ events, I could see needing to kind of experiment with different ways to format that. You may be noticed in my announcement for these sessions, since there were only 4, I elected to use a bulleted list with the dates in text. And so a list may be appropriate instead of a table. And honest to goodness, you might actually consider Googling your particular scenario and searching the internet to see what other digital accessibility experts have come up with to solve these things. I have learned some interesting tricks from a variety of professionals out there just by finding things posted on YouTube and different things like that. So I encourage you to think critically about the format of what you're building and think creatively. Oftentimes, when we push ourselves to try something new, the outcome is still really nice. So,
And I
you
know
know,
with the calendar, that might be something that if you have your header row like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you formatted the information appropriately within the table, that might be something that is accessible. It's just really important to test it out once again, making sure you have a header row. And right now I'm using my tab key to tab through the table, and that's a good way to make sure that, especially if you're using split or merge cells, which we do not recommend, to tab through your table and make sure it operates how you expect it to. All right, just checking my notes here to make sure I don't leave anything out. And then if you're going to convert a Word document to PDF, and we'll get to that later, tables are something that you want to double check once you convert it to PDF as well. If I scroll down here to my next page, I want to talk right now about images. So when you're adding images in Word specifically, any images that are not purely decorative need to be inline, formatted inline, in order for a screen reader to pick up on it and read the alternative text. So right now I'm going to add an image. I'll go to Insert, Picture, Picture from File. I have my Accessibility Cat image. And when I insert that image, some images, if you look at the bottom, will already have alternative text added just as a generic alternative text. You'll typically want to edit that if you have an image that's displaying any kind of important information that somebody who is visually impaired cannot see. So right now my image is automatically inline. I'm going to right click and move my cursor down to edit alt text. And so that brings up a menu on the right hand side, and it says it's already got an alt text description that was automatically generated, but I do not want to use that because a picture containing cat, domestic cat, mammal, indoor does not make a whole lot of sense to somebody that is using a screen reader. So I'm going to type in a different description.
and while Summer types that description, this process looks pretty much the same on a PC, which is why we're not switching screens to show it again. So you would right click and edit the alt text just like this. The pop-up menus look a little different, but the buttons are essentially the same.
Yes, and if you do have an image that is purely decorative, maybe some swirls, it doesn't convey any information to the user, in that moment you can use the mark as decorative, so it just kind of skips over that image for the screen reader would, and doesn't actually go into that image. And so you want to make sure on Word, once again, that you are presenting images in line. So if I go up to the top in my picture format and I look at wrap text, I know wrapping text tends to make things look a little neater and more polished or prettier. But if you do choose to wrap text and leave the document as a Word document, the screen reader will not be able to access the alternative text in that image. So it's important to keep it in line unless you're converting it to a PDF, at which point you would need to check the accessibility in the PDF to make sure everything's being read in the correct order. And we'll get to that as well. When it comes to text boxes, these are also not accessible in Microsoft Word. It's a different story for PowerPoint, which we'll get to next week I believe. But text
Yes, next
boxes are not accessible in Microsoft Word. The screen reader can't get into them to read the contents. So unless, once again, you're converting the document to a PDF, you want to avoid text boxes. And then finally, these two examples at the bottom of my Word document are examples of using hyperlinks in a document. So both of these lines both lead the reader to the same information. My first line reads, follow this link, and has a hyperlink word link to read more about digital accessibility. The problem with this link is, number one, that when a screen reader reads it, it will say something like, follow this link to read more about digital accessibility. So it's repetitive and annoying. And also it doesn't really tell you where you're going. If you hover over it, it does have the tooltip that has the actual website URL, but it doesn't really tell the screen reader where you're going, or even a sighted reader where you're going. So what I like to do, and it's really important to use descriptive hyperlink text. So for a better option, you could say, read more about digital accessibility and tell the reader where they're going at Ohio State's Link Digital Accessibility Center. And once again, that's one of those things that's really helpful for all users, and especially helpful for someone who's using a screen reader. All right. So those are the main things that I wanted to touch on as far as Word document accessibility. And I want to go to actually review the accessibility of this document. So I have some good examples and some poor examples, and I want to show you how the accessibility checker actually tags those. So if I go up to the top of the screen and click review, I'll go to the left-hand side and select check accessibility. And on the right side of the screen, I have a little menu that shows me errors and warnings. There may also be tips in here. Errors are the really, really wrong things that you definitely need to address. The things that will not be accessible to a screen reader or keyboard user. Warnings are things that are usually not accessible, but occasionally there are some exceptions. So the errors that I have for in this document, if you select missing alternative text, drop down, you'll note that I did not add alternative text to either of my charts, my pie charts. So you'll want to add alternative text to my pie charts before I distribute this document. And you can do that the same way by going into chart formatting, Amy.
Pretty sure it's chart formatting.
Chart formatting. Well, that would be helpful if I could.
Oh, here we go. It's steps to fix. Does it, but it doesn't work that way. So sometimes you run into some tricky things that don't behave the way that they should. In this instance, if it's a simple graph, you might consider including a text-based caption, or you could include just sort of a paragraph about the charts if you can't get the alt text to work, as long as that information is provided in an alternative format. And I have seen some pretty interesting tricks to make it accessible to a screen reader, but not to someone who's viewing the document in its entirety.
There we go.
By putting the text in white and hiding it. So Summer, can you go back quick? How'd you get there?
Yeah, I did the right clicking. Apparently I was right clicking.
Oh, there it is. If you right click above by the title, not on the picture.
Yeah, not on the picture.
Okay, so we solved it, folks. If you right click up closer to the title, you can find that edit alt text bit.
Thank you.
But if you do get stuck, honest to goodness, just put a caption in there that explains the chart and that will cover your bases. There's often multiple solutions to digital accessibility needs.
Something is always better than nothing too. And then another error I have is there's no header row on my table. On my second table, I don't have a header row, so that the accessibility checker is gonna highlight that. And then as I showed you earlier, I have hard to read color contrast. So if you click on the actual error, it brings you to that point in the table or that point in the document. So that's also really helpful. So that is the accessibility checker, and we are quickly running out of time. So
yes, we will move along.
so I am going to now show you how to, I'm gonna stop this share and do a new share and show you how to actually, my mistake. I'm gonna reshare that because I want to show you one more thing. You always want to give an appropriate, actually, I'm gonna share my whole desktop because I think you need to see that. Can you see my whole desktop?
Yes.
All right, so before you're gonna convert this to a PDF, you want to go to File on Mac, Properties. You'll bring up this Properties box and then select Summary, and you'll want to add a title. So a title of the document is different than a file name, but I'm probably going to name this the same as my file name. It just shows up differently for screen readers.
So one case your file name might be different than your title is when I'm collaborating on projects, I typically put my initials at the end of a file name, or I put a date on the end of the file name. You would not necessarily want that in the document title if that's not relevant to folks. And Summer, maybe before we switch gears, I should show how to do this on a PC because it is in fact one of the things that's very different.
Yeah, I was just gonna show on Mac first how to open in PDF and then switch.
Okay, do that and then we'll switch later. Yes.
Right.
Okay, moving along.
All right, so I'm going to stop that share. And one of the most universal ways to convert a Word document to a PDF is to start in Adobe Acrobat Pro. So that's where I'm going to start. And really quickly, in order to convert that document, I just created 2 PDF. I'm going to need to share my entire screen. Is to go to File, Create PDF from File, and then I'll select wherever I had that document and open it as a PDF. And then I'm going to switch it over to Amy to show you how to do the title on a Mac and then convert to PDF on a Mac. So I'll stop share.
PC. I am the PC runner.
I'm sorry. I can't get that out of my head.
It's okay. We have, I don't know about you, but I have not had enough coffee, so it happens. All right, I'm getting my screen share going here. And just to take a step back for context, because we're covering things so quickly, this is how you save your document title in the document properties on a PC. So you go to File, and then there's this tab called Info. And then it's just, it took me a bit to find this. It floats over here and there's this tiny little text that says title. And this is where you add the title. So you'll notice in my file name that I don't like spaces. That's just how I am. I don't like file names that have spaces. But in a title, we want spaces because a screen reader is going to read this. So I put something more meaningful and actual words in the title for a screen reader to read someone the document. And then you save it and you're good to go. I'm going to stop share and I will switch over to sharing Acrobat. And the process is pretty similar on PC, which is nice. So you can click create PDF, and then from a single file, let's go back to file, create. Okay, I'm going to step back. So go up to file. Can everybody still see my window? Because I've been kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So file, create, PDF from file. So it's very similar. And then there's a document we've been using this morning, and we'll click open. And it's giving me this nice little dialog box that I'm not allowed to do this while the Word document's open. So we'll retry after I close that. And it's thinking about it. There it goes. So now we have a PDF, and some of this stuff is going to be wrong because I built it wrong in here. So we will have some good demonstrations of how these things work. I'm going to need to move my video pod. So since I do digital accessibility checks quickly on a lot of documents, I have the accessibility tool, checker tool already on my user interface in Acrobat. If you haven't really used it yet, or you've done an update, it sometimes disappears. And to get that tool back, you go to more tools, and it opens up this big box of different tools in Acrobat, and it's listed under protect and standardize. And you can select this accessibility tool and click add. I already have it, so it says open. But then you can add it to your interface, and it sticks over there, so it's a handy button for you. And when you click on the accessibility button, you can run a check. You do need to save this as soon as you're done making the PDF. So I am going to click save really quick. And just save it as a PDF. So now it's saved, and we also recommend kind of saving a raw file in case everything falls apart. So I'm going to also go and take an extra moment to go file, save as, and just add like a 1 on this as copy 1, because sometimes the tags and things go terribly wrong, and it's actually faster to just trash the copy you're working in and start over. So I'm just going to throw that out there. It happens. So save an original copy, and then you can get to work on a secondary copy. So we can run an accessibility check on this and start checking. And it says I've got some issues. So the issues will pop up over here on the accessibility checker. And it says I need to check the logical reading order, the title, and the color contrast. So this is why we encourage you to check the color contrast in Word before you move to PDF. Word does a nice job of tagging that for you, which takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. If you forget and you need to do this manually, we have some resources to help you, which we'll share with you. There's some tools to actually grab the color codes, make sure they're accessible, but it's just a lot faster to do it in Word. And then I've got an issue with the table. It seems that the headers didn't come through properly. So to start fixing some of this stuff, you can start by checking the title. To do that on the PC, you can click File and Properties, and it says the title up here. So I'm satisfied with that. And if you don't have a title, that's where you add it. And since I'm satisfied with the title and I fixed it in Properties, you can just click Fix, and it will carry it over. If you click Fix without checking it, it sometimes grabs old titles from documents you've started before that aren't relevant. So do check it before you just automatically fix it. The logical reading order, we check in here, and it will show you, so it's this little icon with like these little boxes and sort of a line with a Z, and it shows you how all these are tagged with numbers. You'll see this box is 1, and I do have a mistake with my headings because I left 2 heading 1s in there. And this 2, 3, 4. So we've got some interesting things hopping around because we've got some empty containers. So I'll show you how to get rid of those. Like the 2, there's nothing there. So that means I must have added an extra line on accident. And to get rid of these empty containers that won't read anything, you just right click and it'll bring up delete selected item structure. And so you can get rid of that empty container that has nothing in it that way. And if you find those empty things too, you can also delete them from the tags, which I'll show you in a minute. So this reading order is pretty decent. It looks like the table got marked as 4. So to fix that, we would just click on this container 5 with our image, and then click and hold to drag and drop to move that to number 4. So you can reorder these things to fix them. And I have page 2. I didn't even realize there was a page 2. We have another empty container, so I would delete that. And I'm going to leave it there just in case I need it to show you how to get rid of it in tags. So you'll notice that in the tags, I kind of have a mess here with the heading structure. I have 2 heading 1s, which we don't want. So I'll delete this. And I would have to go back and delete this text too, because it's duplicate. But then this fixes our nested heading structure. So we go properly from heading 1 to heading 2. And then you'll notice this paragraph tag on the end. It's not helpful. There's nothing there. We don't want the screen reader to say there's a paragraph and then not read anything. So when you're in the tags, you can get rid of this by right clicking, and you can kind of cover the whole document at once by saying delete empty tags. And normally it works, but it didn't work this time. So we're going to delete it knowing it's empty. And then if you needed to change a header, like let's pretend, oh, so here's a good one. This list of things really should be tagged as a header 3 because it lives under the introduction. And then you can just click on it and it'll open a box that you can edit. So I'm going to delete the P for paragraph, and we'll give you the help documentation that'll give you like all the abbreviations for these tags, because you do need the abbreviations correct for the tags to stay. So that's basically how you edit tags and edit reading order. And if you have any issues, you can also do a different option. Like if this comes in and it's pretty terrible, you can actually destroy the page structure. I'll try it on this one, I guess. So I can go to the reading order panel, and let's say it's just made a mess of it. You can right click and oh no, I'm stuck.
I think you have to right click on the document in the order panel.
Okay, in the order panel. Oops. There it is. Yeah, so if you click on the document title, you can clear the page structure and it'll wipe all this out. If you do this, it doesn't always undo, so be really sure that's what you want to do. But you can delete it. And then I'll quickly show you how to create your own page structure. Well, we're running out of time. Summer, I think we're running out of time for this, but you can destroy it and start over if you wanted. Your best bet is usually use the auto tags.
Yeah, I think you might want to show the reading order like panel that pops up when you do that. At least look at the reading order
Okay.
panel if you don't do it yourself. So
Yeah, I'll clear the page structure just so you can see what the panel looks like. Then you would click the reading order, and since there's no structure, you have to build it, and this reading order button is over on the right, and it is thankfully helpfully labeled as reading order. So then you get this little like crosshair kind of T looking icon, and you click your mouse and kind of draw a box over an object. Oops. And then it flags this text, and then this would be heading 1. So sometimes if the auto tagging goes really badly, this is how you get around that and this works best for shorter documents. For really long documents, the auto tagging is usually better. So I've now tagged a heading 1 and a heading 2, and then you can see if you don't use your mouse properly, you can miss a line. So do watch and make sure everything's highlighted in pink that you need to tag. But I'd tag that as a paragraph. So that's kind of how that works. I'd like to leave a little bit of time here for questions. One other tip we have, if you have a multiple page document and one page is doing really well and the other pages are not, save it as another version, and then you can delete the pages that aren't behaving, open the raw document, do a manual construction of the pages that are not auto tagging properly, and then use the binder feature in this combine files feature in PDF to sort of binder the properly built files back together. So sometimes we have to cut and paste things back together of sorts. So I know that's a ton of information thrown at you very quickly. We have about 7 minutes left, and I can stay a little late. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do we have some questions? If you have them, please put them in the chat. We've got a lot of folks on here, 105. So I don't think the microphones are going to serve us very well today. But if you have any questions and you want to put them in chat, please do. We can try to address those in the remaining 7 minutes. Thanks, Summer, for popping those resources in the chat. We've got some Word accessibility, PDF and Word conversion, and we've got some other resources there that are helpful.
if you feel like you are super interested in digital accessibility and you want to take some courses yourself, I took the Buckeye Learn trainings when I first started, and they go into a whole lot of detail. So if that's something you're interested in, I would recommend those. I also really like the WebAIM documentation because it keeps it kind of high level and simple and the need to know. And then we were talking about if you get to the PDF version and you cannot tell with your colors if they're appropriate and you need to manually check them, you can use the WebAIM contrast checker tool.
So we will sit here and let you all mull for a little bit. If you need to think about how to ask your question, if you need to take off, we appreciate you joining us today. The next week's series will be over PowerPoint. The registration links were emailed out, and it will be at the same time on Wednesday next week. So we hope to see you for our PowerPoint session as well.
Thank you, everybody. So glad so many were able to attend.
Pat says, what is the latest related to using color if people might be colorblind? So that can start really broad, Pat, based on the general premise that we make sure any information that is conveyed with color is also conveyed in some other format with text or labels. And then there's also some very specific color combinations to watch out for, and I don't have the resource on hand at the moment, but I could find it for you, Pat, if you'd like me to email it to you. It's a pretty handy website that talks about recommended color combinations, and then it also gives you a preview experience of what people with different types of color blindness experience when they look at an image. And I think it's pretty eye-opening, and it really
Thank you.
gives
I'd
you.
appreciate that.
Yep, I'll find it.
I'm Holmes.86.
Okay.
Years ago, I had someone in one of my classes in the old days when we were using posters and writing with markers. And I thought I was really helping people see things because I would change off the colors. And at one point, one of the men in the class said, "Did you just write something? Because I cannot see it."
Yes,
And that's when I became really aware of that, because it looked just fine to me, but later he told me he's colorblind and there's some colors that he just can't see at all. So I think we just have to be aware of that.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
men are actually more likely to be colorblind than women. And I think it's like a higher percentage of men than when I first read it, I was like, wow, that's more people than I thought. I have a friend that is colorblind, and I did not know for the first couple of years I knew him. I just never knew that about him. So.
And Kelvin makes a good point too. Colors with the same saturation, they all look the same. Yeah, it can be. Thank you, Kelvin. It can be really, really tricky to sort out. Honestly, I try to stick to really basic, dark gray on white, black on white kind of color schemes for most of my things.
Older adult eyes sometimes can see things better when they're on yellow than when they're on white. And I think that's
there's also some documentation
unusual
out
thing
there
that I
about
wasn't
that.
expecting. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending.
There's also the reverse where instead of a white paper, you have black with white on it.
Oh,
That's
right. Yes.
easier on the eyes.
Yes.
It saves electrons. I don't know. There's some other benefits to it, but
yeah. I remember talking about that in one of the accessibility trainings that we did too, that was an option. Yeah, there's so much to learn. Always more.
always. Thank you all. This is really helpful.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.